In the 5th and final season of You, Joe Goldberg comes home to New York City after gallivanting around the world chasing, is it love? Well, yeah, sure, he's chasing love and, I mean, let's be real, he's doing a horrible job. How did we get here? Let's start from the beginning. Joe meets Guinevere Beck, aka Beck, at his bookstore Mooney's. There's some flirtation, shared smiles. They're discussing the literature of Paula Fox and Dan Brown. They're definitely turning it on. Then his co-worker, Ethan, suggests,
She read her number on there? I'd be Googling the hell out of her right now. You know her full name?
"Oh no, Ethan, what have you done?" Ethan.
Always be closing that chick.
So Joe goes down the rabbit hole, trying to find anything and everything he can about Beck, including her address.
Every account set to public. You want to be seen.
He learns a lot about her. She's an aspiring poet. She has a group of wild friends, a toxic boyfriend. She's kind of a work in progress, but nothing he can't help. She's just missing direction in life, and curtains, and spidey sense. Joe is on the pursuit, and he wants to be the only one for her, a protector who's always there for her, literally. And he's also trying his best to be the overall perfect man, someone everyone can love. He even takes his young neighbor Paco under his wing, sharing his favorite literary classics and a sandwich, without washing his hands, which I've always noted and has always really disturbed me. Now, Joe's wooing of Beck actually kind of works. They're hanging out, going on dates, having fun. He's tracking her every move, taking out the ops. There's a glass cage involved, but you shouldn't worry about that. You know, it's things only Joe would think were normal courting behavior.
I'm sorry, I have to go.
Things are actually going pretty well for Joe and Beck. He can really see this lasting.
What was that, 8 seconds?
But Beck's best friend, Peach Salinger, yes, of the Salingers, is suspicious of Joe and getting in the way of their budding relationship.
Ghost him already.
So he takes care of that. After a while, Joe and Beck's everything ship starts to crumble. Beck starts looking for a place to vent, and maybe a little bit more, with a new therapist, Dr. Nikki. Oh, and guess who just happens to start seeing the same therapist? After some soul searching and a bit of, well, we can call it research, Joe and Beck agree to break up.
Goodbye, Beck.
Enter Miss Karen Minty. She and Joe have a fling, but Joe just can't get Beck off his mind, and vice versa, so Karen takes a swift Minty leave.
Turns out you're my get-out-of-jail-free card.
So Joe and Beck are back on track, but Beck can't help but think about...
What he did to me, one of these days he's gonna do to you. Or worse. Maybe he'll do whatever the hell he did to Candace.
Candace. So she starts down a rabbit hole trying to find out the truth about this infamous Candace.
For whatever reason, Joe doesn't seem to want to talk about her.
To calm her suspicions, Joe tells Beck the truth. Well, his version of it.
I need you to tell me what happened with Candace.
She cheated on me. She broke my heart.
And just like that, they're back on track. Whew! Except, do you remember Dr. Nikki? Joe decides he needs to listen to his gut and try to get some answers about what might be going on between Dr. Nikki and Beck.
Beck. You were for months. He tasted you.
And after uncovering the truth, now it's time for Beck to quell Joe's worries.
I love you, Joe.
And look at that, they're back on track again. These two are track stars. But then Beck finds Joe's secret box of treasure, which is completely normal and not at all disgusting, and which ties him to Benji's disappearance and Peach's death, and even her missing phone and other items. And poof, now she's in a box. Look at that, it's a tight metaphor. In his own twisted way, this is how Joe thinks they can save their relationship and each other.
Everything I have done for you.
And he's right. Beck devises a plan. She writes a book that pins Joe's crimes on Dr. Nikki.
There's this part where I talk about a box of mementos that I found on Nikki's property, evidence.
Beck is able to play Joe, luring him into opening the glass cage, and she pulls the old typewriter switchblade switcheroo on him and locks him in the cage to make her escape. She runs up the stairs, only to find the door is locked.
It's gonna kill me! Open this door right now!
But luckily, Joe's good old friend Paco is there to save the day. Oh no. It must have been that fucking sandwich. So, that's a wrap on Beck. But it's not the last we hear from her. No, in Joe's final act of chivalry, he gets Beck's book published, the one incriminating Dr. Nikki for his crimes, now including Beck's death. So life is back to normal after murdering 6 people, until one of them walks right into Mooney's.
Hey, bunny.
Candace. Here.
Alive.
In season 1, the warm tones are reflective of Joe's affection for Beck. His mission to be her perfect man and his goal to protect her create a visual sense of comfort until it turns into smothering, or should we say, strangling. Welcome to season 2 and welcome to LA, Joe. After his confrontation with his ex Candace, who somehow unalived herself after he tried to bury her in the woods, Joe hightails it out of New York and flees clear across the country. And what better place to act like everything is fine than the City of Angels? Oh, by the way, he goes by Will now, but we're gonna keep calling him Joe for the sake of this lovely recap. He gets acquainted with his neighbors Ellie and Delilah, who honestly don't think much of him.
You're not on the socials, like, at all. Thought you might be some kind of freak.
He gets a job at a very LA-esque cafe/bookshop called Anavrin with a soon-to-be bestie, a friendly and chaotic aspiring screenplay writer named 40. And then there's love.
Hello. You?
No, not that love. With a lowercase L. Joe's done with that kind of love.
Excuse me?
No, now there's love.
Do you think this peach looks like a butt?
Joe truly just cannot help himself. Despite his attempts not to give in to his old habits, some things never change. In fact, he's been following this love Quinn ever since he moved to LA. Shocker, spoiler, found an apartment that looks right into her window, and works at a store that's owned by her wealthy family. Another fun fact, Will Bettelheim isn't just a silly new name. No, it's actually the stolen identity of a man Joe bludgeons and locks in a brand new glass cage, which he builds himself every season. It's almost perfect until the real Will's past comes back to haunt him.
What are you doing?
But he eventually lets Will out after Will gets him out of a bind. Let's not forget, Will is a bad man. Back to Love and Joe. Love is actually kind of into Joe. She's very into Joe. She shows him around the city, takes him on a little food tour, and cooks him a meal. She even starts leaving him love notes with baked foods in his work locker. And it works. Joe's falling for Love. He even got a new box of treasures. Things are looking up for Joe and Love, but then, surprise, Candace tracks down Joe and is determined to ruin his life under her own alias, Amy, at a lovely family welcome hosted by Love and 40's parents.
You hurt me or the Quinns, I reveal your identity to everyone, and everything gets turned over to the authorities.
Are you crazy? I'm just trying to talk to you.
But that doesn't work. In fact, Love and Joe's relationship is so strong at this point, they utter the 3 most beautiful words you can say to another person.
I wolf you.
I wolf you too.
These two are seriously fucked up. Then Candace breaks into Joe's apartment to try to get evidence of his crimes, but Love is onto her and catches her in the act. She gets Candace to spill everything about Joe, and that leads to their breakup. Joe and Love go their separate ways and start seeing other people. Love starts seeing Milo, a tall Australian glass of water. Joe starts seeing Delilah, but something about Joe doesn't seem right to Delilah. No, it's not that. She starts investigating him after a cop friend suspects him of a mysterious murder.
Delilah, that was the same night that Henderson was murdered.
And that lands her right in the old glass cage. But Joe promises, as he does, he'll let her out the next day, giving him enough time to make arrangements to wrap up his loose ends in LA and flee the city. Unfortunately, Joe's timeline is interrupted when 40 kidnaps him to hunker down and help him write a screenplay based on the book, The Dark Face of Love. Does that sound familiar, does it? When Joe finally returns to release Delilah, he finds her dead, and he's not the one who did it. Love not only kills Delilah, but also kills Candace, and all to protect Joe. This is not the Love he thought he knew, and Joe's ready to get rid of her. But
I'm pregnant.
She's preggers. To make things even weirder, it turns out Love had actually been stalking Joe ever since they met.
We're soulmates, Joe.
It is a match made in hell.
Maybe I got a little obsessed.
So Joe reluctantly continues this relationship. 40 starts closing in on Joe as his research for his screenplay about Beck's book and his own suspicions about him lead him straight to Dr. Nikki. And we know what happens when someone gets too curious around Joe. Jump ahead, Joe and Love are expecting, so they leave the city behind and move to the suburbs. Life seems good. And the views are great too. They're in the millions.
Exactly where I had to be to meet you.
Season 2 goes bright and almost blinding against the Los Angeles backdrop. Joe attempts to outrun his past. He tries to blend into obscurity under this harsh and exposing light. Season 3 is a fresh start for Joe, Love, and their newborn baby Henry as they enjoy a quiet life in Madre Linda. They're looking down the barrel of a near-perfect white picket fence life surrounded by some of the most egregious people Joe's ever met. From the outside, Joe and Love are such a happy couple-ish. I mean, it's not Joe's fault his mind is elsewhere. Yet another box of treasures gets Joe in trouble, but Love took the matters and an axe into her own hands. At least Joe was kind enough to help clean it up. Clearly there's tension between Joe and Love, so they decide to go to couples therapy, where they're not murderers.
But you are not
murderers.
Their sessions inspire them to branch out into the community. Joe starts volunteering at the local library. Love opens a bakery. It's innocent enough. Nothing can derail them now, apart from the fact that Joe starts a new obsession with his coworker Marianne, and Love is, she even has her eyes on Theo, her neighbor and Natalie's son, because you know what's better than one unfaithful spouse? Two! All the while, the entire town is in a frenzy helping the investigation into Natalie's so-called disappearance, and Joe and Love feel like the walls are closing in on them. But Joe is determined to get out of this disastrous marriage, especially being so enamored with Marianne, while Love is barely holding on by a string and finds the way to pass the time through some gardening. To try to save their marriage, Love decides she and Joe need to spice things up.
Sherry and Carrie are in an open marriage. And they want to sleep with us.
Joe takes this as an opportunity to fast-track the destruction of their marriage, and he accepts the very sexy offer. The group has trouble getting into the swing of things. This leads to an argument between Joe and Love.
I killed Natalie for you!
Sherry and Carrie overhear their conversation about the murders, and in classic Joe style, they end up in a glass cage. Love is in charge of handling Sherry and Carrie, while Joe is busy trying to win Marianne over the only way he knows how. At this point, Love's had enough, and she decides that she'd rather save herself than the marriage. But Joe is ready. He turned the tables on her. Let's just say when it comes to Joe, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen.
The rest of Joe Goldberg's body was never found, but it was presumed butchered or worse.
Learning Marianne flees Madre Linda, Joe does the Joe thing and tries to track her down and ends up in Paris.
I will find you.
Season 3's colors are cheerful, yet muted, as Joe and Love live a not-so-happily ever after. The treatment depicts the perfect life in the suburbs they've always wanted, but will never have. Bonjour, or should I say, hello. The city of love didn't go quite as well as Joe expected with Marianne, and he found himself in jolly old London.
Marianne!
New job alert! Joe is now a professor of literature under the alias Jonathan Moore, given to him by the Quinn family fixer in exchange for the money he absconded from Love's bank account. Oh, and he has a sexy new beard, y'all. When he's not growing the minds of future generations, or that beautiful beard, he's making friends with Malcolm and Kate, who he occasionally tries to not watch through his window.
Why does the universe keep doing this to me?
This leads to an invitation into their tight-knit friend group of London's elite, and no surprise, Joe loathes them, except for one, Reese Montrose, who happens to be a pretty chill guy. In a completely unchilled twist, Joe wakes up after a night of drinking to Malcolm stabbed to death on his table under mysterious circumstances, and he's 100% sure he didn't do it, right? I mean, Joe's not a murderer anymore. But just in case, Joe does the completely wrong thing and disposes of the body so as to not become a suspect in this murder. To make matters worse, Joe starts receiving anonymous text messages from someone who seems to be watching him and seems to have the answers he's looking for. Joe's life turns into an IRL whodunit, and he is the main character. And thanks to Nadia, his student and mystery novel fanatic, he's getting some help to understand just how these stories typically work. Joe is suspicious of everyone in his new friend group, especially because they all seem to despise him, so he decides to spy on them.
I'm doing research. I'm writing a book about the rich.
And he uncovers interesting things about all of them, but his hunt keeps leading him to dead ends. Meanwhile, his anonymous texter is closing in on him, threatening to expose him and destroy his life. The only thing keeping Joe afloat is his budding feelings for Kate, who just might be into him too. And one jealous friend in particular, Roald, can't stand it and tries to take care of it.
That escalated quickly.
He's even gone and convinced the friend group that Joe is the eat-the-rich killer because, strangely enough, one of their other friends dies and Roald begins a manhunt.
I reckon I might have been a hound in a past life, because I can smell you now.
Luckily, Joe's old pal, Reese, is there to help him out. It turns out Reese was behind the text messages and let a new obsession begin.
Whatever your big plans are, I need to stop you before you can hurt another soul and drag mine down with you.
Joe, in classic Joe fashion, starts stalking Reese, but somehow Reese is always one step ahead of him, and he has a big D for Joe. Sorry, that's a demand.
Kill Lockwood, and I'll release her immediately.
But Joe turns it up a notch and refuses and confronts him.
So I don't know you. Really?
And kills him. Except Joe never knew the real Reese Montrose at all, and the Reese that had been stalking him was a figment of his imagination the whole time. Oh my goodness. So Joe's in a pickle now that he knows Marianne is somewhere in London in a glass cage after kidnapping her in a dissociative state. Now, this whole time, Nadia has been suspicious of Joe and how he might be connected to the recent string of murders, so she starts investigating him. Since mystery novels are her thing, she ends up finding the glass cage and Marianne. Joe is desperately trying to retrace his steps and finally finds his way. He creates a plan to free her, but unbeknownst to him, Nadia is one step ahead of him and had concocted her own plan in which Marianne fakes her death, which leads to Joe getting her out of the cage. At this point, Joe is completely out of his mind and has a wild hallucination starring a top-tier few of his many victims, showing him that he's the problem and always will be the problem. That was directed by me, by the way. I'm just saying. However, Joe is saved, and he decides to open up to Kate about only some of his past sins, and to his surprise, Kate couldn't care less because she's evil. I've killed people. She's got her own demons. One thing he conveniently leaves out, the very lucrative murder of her father, Tom Lockwood. So with her new influence and extreme wealth, she helps him get rid of all of his problems. They start by framing Nadia for the murder of Reese and use their lawyers to scrub his past and leave Professor Jonathan Moore behind. Then, Joe and Kate flee London for a fresh start back to where our story began, New York City, and he reemerges as his true self, Joe Goldberg. Oh, Joseph, what will you do next?
I'm just here to help.
And season 4 is the darkest of the series. The cold London fog and desaturated colors show the chilling nature of the looming presence over Joe as he finds himself a mystery novel come to life. Long story short, Joe Goldberg is back, living in New York City now as part of one of the wealthiest families in the world. Whew. So now you're up to speed. I'll see you soon.